We were almost here on time.
Almost. Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the Prestige Reef Dork show, returning after what, a 3-week break? Outrageous. 4-week break, maybe. A long time.
Is it?
Yeah, long time. I am Reef Dork, aka Alex, and with me as always is Ryan from the UK's #1 coral selling website, prestigereef.co.uk. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Yeah, I had an emergency. I had to go and get a beer, and I left it a little bit too late. So I came back and saw that it was 7 o'clock. I was like, oh God, quick.
Then you were feeding the fish or something over there, weren't you?
Yeah, I hadn't fed my.
I was like, you realise it's 7 o'clock, don't you?
I know, yeah. It's all right. Don't worry. No one expects us to be professional.
That's true.
So, right. We are back after a bit of a break, and we're back with fish stuff. So we'll go through the usual features with a little bit of a mix-up today, and we'll get stuck into the mass debate later on, which is going to be about snorkeling. Because for those of you who don't know, I got married, which is why I've been away for so long, and I went on honeymoon to Mauritius, which is snorkeling Mecca. Well, perhaps not Mecca, but it was wicked. So
it was one of the best. So I went snorkeling and scuba diving in Mauritius as well. It was one of the best places I ever went scuba diving. This was it was probably about 12 years ago now, but I might be different now, but it really was one of the, I've been all over the world. It was one of the best places I've been to.
Cool. Well, we will come on to that, and we will discuss it at the relevant time. For now, I did see one thing, and thank everybody saying congratulations. Thank you very much. And one thing I did see, hang on, Les got married pretty much the same day.
Oh, really?
Or well, I don't actually know if I've said what day it was, but yeah, there you go. Congratulations, Les. Well done.
It was funny, your wedding, wasn't it? Because not your wedding, but what happened to me on your wedding, because that was the day that there was no water at our house. The whole of West Sussex had lost water basically, and because obviously I wanted to make myself look good for your wedding.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I went into the coral farm and I used the 400 liters of RO water. Because that was the only option available to me all day. I didn't use all 400 liters, but I had it stored up, and that's what I used to. That was how committed I was to being there and being clean
and not smelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I appreciate it, of course. So, all right. Well, so we're going to crack straight on with week in reefing, and normally the first thing we talk about is how our week in reefing has been. Yeah. It's been about 3 weeks in reefing.
True.
So so what's going on with you? And you've just uploaded a video that I haven't watched yet. So what's the latest with your tank?
So obviously the angelfish tank has had more fish. I think if it was 3 weeks ago, that was probably. Oh, I didn't have the gold flake at the time, did I?
No. You got
because I told you I would never get a gold flake. And I had no interest in them. And during our angelfish live stream, where who has the better tasting angelfish, I think I won based on that.
The gold flake lost to the flag.
The gold flake lost basically. And I said I didn't want one, and then I sent you a picture saying, "Look what I just bought."
That's a wicked fish. I absolutely love it. I think it's so cool.
It's a juvenile at the moment, so it hasn't got the blue lips yet, but they're just starting to get in. So that's gone into the water box tank. At the same time, I got an annularis. So that it was actually, it was the same day I got an annularis, so I put that in there. And then since then, I've just added 3 tangs, which you don't know yet. But I did tell you. A gem tang, pardon?
Gem tang was one of them.
A gem tang yellow and a sailfin tang. So that's what's going on in there. And with regards to the coral farm, I'm starting to frag a lot more of the LPS corals now. I've been slightly lazy. SPS is easy to frag. You just like get some bone cutters. You have to use a saw to frag, and it's a bit more like mentally
slimy.
Yes, yeah. But you have to like cut down the ridges, so it's not as easy to frag LPS.
Yeah.
So I've been lazy, but I've started doing that.
You could just drop an SPS colony on the floor and then just pick up the bits that are
yeah. But I'm more interested in your tanks. I asked you literally just before, like, how has it survived these last 2 weeks?
So I had a tank sitter. So I was away for a full 2 weeks. So my parents came and house sat for us, basically looked after the cat and the tanks. And so I've got 3 tanks, right? I've got the little 50-litre water box. I've got 150-litre 40-gallon Fluval, 50 litre water box, and a big 4-foot Red Sea tank.
Yeah.
So, which do you think did best and had the least problems? The little tiny tank with a low water volume and not with more forgiving corals, or the big tank with big water volume but sensitive corals?
I think you probably wouldn't be asking this question
There's no major disaster with any of them, basically.
Unless it was the little one that did better, because that's the one you would assume wouldn't do better.
So actually, the little one was fine. The little Fluval Evo was pretty much fine. There was a bit of cyano type, sort of green cyano type stuff on the sound bed, but I've had issues with cyano for a little while now. That's just kind of a little bit tricky to get rid of, but it's fine. It looks really good actually. The main tank with acros in it, but with a big water volume, absolutely fine.
Oh, that's interesting, because that was the one I expected not to be fine.
Me too. So I didn't lose any corals. There was one coral that had started bleaching. It's like a spliced acro. Yeah. It had started bleaching maybe a week or two before I went away. And that seems to have, I was expecting to come back and it'd be white.
Yeah.
But it's fine. And it's actually started to recover.
So what you're saying is your dad, who knows nothing about reefing, is better reefer than you.
Exactly. And then the only other one, my LPS tank, 150 litres. Just a few corals. I've got a Cyphastria that's almost completely died. A couple of Bernard porers that have shriveled away mostly.
Yeah.
And everything else is generally okay. But
do you know why?
No, I don't. I've got no idea. I tested all the things that I can test for.
Yeah.
So the simple stuff. Salinity was fine. Phosphates were a little bit high, 0.6, but they've been relatively high anyway. So I wouldn't have thought that would be it. And
that room gets hot, doesn't it?
I had the blind shut.
Warm. The last 2 weeks it's been warm. Like
it wouldn't have got
coral
that.
Farms has started to go. I've turned the heating off on the coral farm.
It could have. I don't think that would be it, because I had the blind shut whilst I was away. I don't think it would have got that warm in here. Because it doesn't. When it gets really hot in the summer, it gets hot up here. But when because like 20 degrees, wasn't it? So could be that, I suppose. But I did just a big, like a 30% water change. I did a 50% water change, 60% maybe on the Fluval.
Yeah.
And they're better now. But some of the Bernards are still sulking. And one of them,
you know where to come if you want more.
I know. So one of them is a Love Blossom Bernard. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Red and green.
Yeah, I do.
I've had a few of them, and I've never had luck with Bernards and Gunnies until recently anyway. Yeah. But I've had a few. That's the one that's sulking. And it's like, that's annoying. Why is it doing that?
Well, I'll be interested to see if the war change brings them back.
Indeed. Well, it looked better straight away. It was quite a big water change, 30%. But I need to do more. I've ordered some more, what are they called? Filters, pre-filters for my RO filter. So when they come through next week, I'll do a couple more big water changes.
And how is your dad doing? Does he appear to have aged many years since you last saw him?
He wasn't really too stressed about it.
From the stress.
Because this was the thing actually. There are a couple of things I did to prepare the tank for going away, because you need to do that, of course. One of the things, obviously, you top up the freshwater reservoir, your dosing containers, all those things, calculus, all those stuff. You make sure everything is full. Yeah, but you don't touch anything the day before within a couple of days of going away. So, for example, the skimmer was dirty. I didn't touch it. I left it, because if you clean it, or and actually the pipes are gurgling at the moment. The weir box is gurgling. Yeah. So it needs a clean. If I cleaned that, it would have been a disaster. So anything you do, you just never do anything, ideally in the week before you go away. So I just left it.
What I like to do, depending on how long I'm going away for, I like to start preparation that long in advance. So if I'm going away for 2 weeks, I start preparation 2 weeks in advance to make sure everything is absolutely. And if I'm going away for 6 weeks, which obviously I've done a few times, I genuinely will start testing every day for 6 weeks, because it's worth doing it. If it saves you in the long run, it's worth putting that effort in. So sure. So I think that's good advice. Basically, if you're going away for 6 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever, start 2 weeks in advance and start making sure everything is as stable as possible.
It's probably roughly the sort of timeline I was working on it. But the other thing I said to my dad, he was saying, look, are there some kind of chemicals I'll need to pour in if something happens or whatever? Yeah. And I was like, the only job you've got is to feed. I measured out all the food. So it was one frozen cube per day. 3 times a day. I measured them all out. So individual pots. I said, you put one of these in the morning, one in the afternoon, one in the evening. Yeah. Really clear instructions. and just said, you don't do anything else, you just feed it. You don't need to clean the glass, you don't need to pour anything in, just feed the tank, and that's it. And I said a few times, to be really clear, look, if you're away for a day, you're out all day long, don't double feed when you get back, or if you go away for an entire day, just don't feed, they'll be fine. So less is more, and I hammered that home, especially on the Fluval Evo, because less is very much more on a feeding on a tank like that. But yeah, so, and actually generally it was fine. I lost a couple of corals. I had a couple of SPS that have almost completely stripped, and they were quite close to torches, so I wonder if they got swayed and stung. But I don't know what the issue is. Maybe I should do an ICP. But
does it make you wonder, like, what do you would that have happened if you were there, or would it not have happened if you were there?
So that the LPS tank has been absolutely fine for a long time. So it's a hell of a coincidence that it happened whilst I was away. And I feel like I would have, obviously it still would have happened, but I feel like I would have seen the start of it and been able to take action, water changes or whatever. So, but it's very strange. I don't know. It's weird.
I was just interested, like, what would you have done differently in those 2 weeks? What didn't you do that your dad would have done? Would you have done a water change in those 2 weeks?
The only thing that didn't happen was a water change. That's it. On the LPS tank, on the last day, it ran out of the freshwater reservoir, ran dry. So for one day, for half a day, sorry, it was evaporating, so the salinity was going up, but it didn't go up much at all, like almost nothing. So that wouldn't have been it. So I think the only thing I would have done differently is if I might have spotted an issue, maybe moved a couple of corals around or whatever, and a couple of big water changes. But it's fine. At the end of the day, if I go away and get back and I've lost half a dozen corals out of 200, that's not bad. That's fine. I can live with that.
And it's the risk that that's the risk that we take.
And the other thing, so you mentioned, you asked whilst I was away, you said, have I checked in and asked how the tank is? And I said no, because I don't want to know. So if the tank is all bleached, nothing I can do about it.
That's like, your corals are so much better. They're these beautiful white colors.
Right. Yeah, really gleaming. So there's nothing I can do about it. So if there was a problem that I couldn't fix or get someone in to come and fix, then fine. But if just a few corals are dying, don't tell me. It just stress me out. So don't care. So I left it.
It's funny because that, to some extent, is what I'm like when I go away. I can see on the cameras, and I have orange filters on the cameras, and the reason I have the orange filters is because a white coral will gleams like bright as anything on the cameras, and I will maybe check them once a day just to see. I did spot something. I spotted one of the water level had dropped on one of the tanks when I was in America, and I sent someone over to do it. But generally speaking, if I'm away, I don't want to know. I want someone to come in, feed the fish, and then leave.
Cameras are dangerous, and obviously, like, this was a special holiday. This isn't something that you do every year. So there was no way I was going to be stressing about it. I just don't care about the tank in that context. But cameras are the worst thing, because you're like, oh, I might as well just have a quick look. And then
I look once a day, literally, when I first get up in the morning.
That's still quite a lot, but it's different because you've got that's your business. But so I don't like the idea of having a camera, actually.
Interesting.
If I can do something about it, then maybe, but I don't know. I think the chance of that, if you're having a catastrophe whilst you're away, pretty slim.
Oh, don't say that. Don't say that.
Touch wood.
We can have a catastrophe when we're not away.
Yeah, indeed. But that was my week in Reef. Everything was all right. And a quick question from Reefkeeper's Archive: do you still have that leopard wrasse? And yes, I do. He's doing fine. So that was one of the fish that I've always seen as it's a macropharyngodon. It's not a Jeffrey, I don't think. I can't remember what it is, but it's a leopard wrasse. Macropharyngodon. Like spotted. It's not a peacock wrasse. Anyway, whatever it is.
I was thinking,
Macropharyngodon are a tricky species to keep, and I've always avoided them. But I spoke to Sean at the Ocean Project, and he was like, I can't remember what he said, but he was basically like, "This fine, don't worry about it." And I don't know if it was because I got one from him that he'd had in for ages. I don't know if it's because it was a good specimen, because sometimes the leopard wrasses, it's their mouths are damaged, so they don't feed well. So I don't know if that's what it is, but he's been absolutely fine. I've done nothing special. I've put in a bit of frozen food, the same as I do it all the time. I haven't put in anything specially for him, and he's all right. So
that's the main thing then.
Happy days.
Yeah, some wrasses can be a bit funny, and again, like with those wrasse, some of them just stop eating. But why? What caught? Even though you can have them for a year and they stop eating randomly for some reason. But It's the same as copper bands.
Yeah, they're a nightmare.
Well, I had a copper band that for some reason, just for 3 days, just went, "I'm not eating anything today for these 3 days." I'm like, "You've been here for like 2 years. Why did you just run?" And then it went back to normal.
But that happens often. You often hear people say, "I've had it for 4 years. It's absolutely fine," and then it just stopped eating and it died. It's
Yeah.
like, what the hell?
Well, I just keep swapping the food around until it finds something that it wants.
Yeah, see, you've got to do that. You've got to make the sacrifices and be prepared to put in the effort when it does go wrong. So
Yeah.
very good.
I will put a cod ban in the angelfish tank at some point, but I'm a little. Well, I put obviously the gem tank's gone in, and for something has attacked it. I think it's the blue face. Yeah, it's got rid of it. I think the blue face has gone. Not really sure I like you. For whatever reason, they were
attack you just in case.
They were in an acclimation box, the same as usual. All the 3 tanks were released at the same time. For some reason, something didn't like the gem tank. So it's fish are funny, but the difference with regard, I don't know, I'm going all off on a tangent here. The difference with regards to having an acclimation box and not having an acclimation box is unbelievable. That's what I'm pushing at the moment. I want people to start using them because I use it for every single fish now. So
you don't sell them by any chance, do you?
No, I don't. I should start selling them, shouldn't I?
But no,
I do sell corals, and you can buy corals on my website right now if you want.
PrestigeReef.co.uk.
Yeah.
Best coral selling website in the country. But no, that's a good thing. They're not expensive. I think one of the things that probably puts people off, and part of what puts me off, is that it's another thing to take up space because it's 18 inches long. It's quite big, and I've got so many things like that in my house that just every cupboard in my house and every storage space is filled with fish tank crap.
Yeah,
and so it's like I want to cut down on that, but they're good. I like them. I like the idea.
Okay.
Well, there we go. So anyway, so that is the week in reefing. Next up, we normally have member questions, but there were no member questions this week. I think so. It's for a start, it's summer, so weird people go outside. What's that about? Why not you stay inside with your fish tank, for God's sake?
No, I know. I've actually, for some reason, the sun has actually got me into the coral farm more.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It makes you feel subtropical or something. But so it's summer, so people go outside and do other stuff and get less invested in their fish tanks. And I've not put a video out for a long time, so I suspect YouTube is suppressing me going. And the channels, like the stats, aren't looking great at the moment.
I think we're out of practice at this, aren't we? As well, 3 weeks off. People are like, who are these guys? We don't even recognize them.
But we're naturals, Ryan. So
one of us might be. I'll let you decide which one of that is.
Yeah.
It's definitely not me.
Okay. But anyway, so that means that we move on to news.
You can't see my face, but when that came up, I went...
Face. I thought you were still talking, but there we go. So we got news. I still haven't got papers to shuffle. Damn it. I forgot. But yes, so we got reefing news. Quite a lot of... So I've gone back over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Because obviously it's been probably 3 weeks since the last live stream. So I've gone back for a little while, and I'm going to go through a few things that have caught my eye. First off, and this is the most recent thing. Have you seen there's been a new series from Red Sea on a new video series?
No.
Red Sea Aquatics. I can't remember what it's called. So there's a new video series on. It's like basics of how to keep a reef tank or something along those lines, and it's like a 5 or 6 series, 5 or 6 video series.
Yeah,
and it looks like this. So we've got Reefkeeping Explained, which is a 38-second video, so succinct. But then you've got
you can get to that very quickly.
That's a brief explanation. But the other one, so there's 6 more. There's what is a reef system.
Yeah.
Episode 2 is the essential gear, which I disagree on some of those. I don't think some of the stuff they list as essential I don't agree on. But anyway, number 3 is setting up the tank. Number 4 is the cycling process. 5 is adding fish and corals. And 6 is maintenance, basically the reefer's routine, they've called it.
Will there be more? I'm assuming there'll be more of them because I can't see when it was last posted, but it looks like it's only a couple of days ago.
They released them all on the same day, which I wouldn't have done. I think they should have released them week by week to get a bit more kind of excitement and people coming on. But anyway, they released them all on the same day. So I think that means that's it. That's all they'll do.
Yeah.
I've not watched them all. I watched the first 1, 2, 3, 4 from the looks of it. And they're quite decent. They're obviously aimed at a beginner audience, but they're good. And the more of that, the better. It's a little bit. It's obviously a marketing driven event, because everything is like, oh, and now what we're doing is we're adding salt, and they're holding up a big bucket of Red Sea salt, and then into a Red Sea tank, of course, with the Red Sea light and pump. So but they're not going to be promoting water, are they? So, but it does feel a little bit like that, like kind of subliminal messaging. But
it's
to
like,
be fair,
look at this protein skimmer.
Yeah, it's Red Sea. It's really good. Buy it. But to be fair, they're decent videos, and they're nicely pitched at kind of the beginner level. So
they did them before. They're explaining how to use their equipment. I actually think they're very professional at. I watched their the roller mat one, the reef mat. I watched that one. I thought actually it's really, really easy to install and also change the filter on. So, and I'm not a DIY person at all.
No, well, they go nice and slow.
Yeah, for slow people like me.
Yeah, exactly. But it's good because it's difficult. I don't know about you, I find it really difficult to speak slowly. So when I'm making a video, because you want to sound a little bit enthusiastic, and I end up saying, right, and today we've got a new skimmer, and this is what it does. This is how you clean, this is how you maintain it. I find it really difficult to say, okay, so today I'm going to show you this new skimmer. This is how you clean it. You can maintain it really easily.
But which one is more engaging? Which of those two things is more engaging? As long as people can hear. I see. I actually, the video I did today, when I watched it, I thought, bloody hell, how many coffees did I had when I made that video? Because I was so like hyperactive. But yeah, I think that's the faster speaking is more engaging.
I think there's a balance, because if you speak slowly, and I try to do that, and I'm trying to do that more, but it's quite difficult. If you speak slowly, that's actually really good. Yeah. But you don't want to fall into the trap of, okay, and now we're going to look at this new light, just monotone and drab. Because when I click, and that's why I try to sound a bit more enthusiastic. For a start, I'm excited to talk about this stuff. But I used to watch videos before I started the channel. There would be people going, so right, this video is going to be
I've improved a lot since then, haven't I?
Exactly, yeah. And it's so frustrating when it's not, you click off instantly. So there's a balance, but the Red Sea ones, going back to that, is they're nice and slow and steady, so you can absorb it without being drab and monotone. So they're good. So it's worth checking out if you haven't seen that video series. So that is the first piece of reefing news. The next piece of news, and I'm going to have to wing this a little bit.
You quickly go on Reef Builders.
Not going on Reef Builders, no, but I am going on the Reef Factory website.
Okay. Because
they announced, and this was after, yes, got it right. This was after I went away. So they announced the price of the much anticipated Reef Factory Smart Tester. Have you seen this?
I've heard about it. I think you showed it to me before, but I haven't actually seen it.
So it's an automatic testing device that will test one parameter at a time.
Yeah.
But you can swap out the reagents. So you can have it to test calcium 1 week, and then if you decide next week you want it to test phosphate, you swap out for phosphate, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
I think it'll do phosphate, calcium, magnesium, nitrate, and I think there are more parameters coming. But I think those are the ones it does. Don't quote me on that. But basically, the main stuff you want to test.
Yeah.
And this is it. Smart looking piece of kit. But the price has been announced. So, Ryan, how much money would you think is a good?
We played this game before. This tests just one thing. I'm sure I've seen it was announced and people were like shocked at the price, which means it's expensive. But I can't remember what it is, but I know it was a lot of money.
Well, let's go with two questions. What do you think it should be? Like, if you're forgetting that, how much do you think it should cost?
How can I be the person that can judge like the amount of effort and research and
you're not judging that. You're judging it from a hobbyist point of view.
Well, you can only compare it to other similar things which cost. Okay. So how much does the cage keeper cost? Or the cage?
800 quid.
Cheaper than that.
Cheaper. And the what's it called? The Focustronic Mastertronic.
Yeah,
that will test several. I think 4 or 5 it can do.
Yeah.
Without changing all reagents.
Yeah.
And that's about 1,200 quid.
Okay. I reckon it's. I was going to say 400 is what I thought it would be, but I don't know if that's right. The face just changed then, so I don't.
So it's not 400 quid. I think even if it was 400 quid, I think that's a fairly steep price on the face of it. It's actually 680 euros.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be about 600 quid, 650
The reason I
pounds
said
sterling.
400, I'm sure there was one of the KH ones that was 400.
Really? I think they're
yeah.
all around the £700-800 mark, aren't they?
You are possibly right. In fact, yeah, you are right, I think.
But either way, that is undeniably quite expensive. And when it was first announced, I was hoping they'd be around the £300 mark each, because then you could buy 2 quite easily.
Yeah.
And test nitrogen phosphate basically.
Yeah.
But at £600, that is relatively expensive. However, and there was a lot of comments in the chat saying, "That's it, forget it, I'm not buying it," and all this sort of stuff, because it is quite a big price. But the replies from Reef Factory say, when you sort of cut through it all, they're trying to say, look, I know it's expensive, but it's expensive for a reason. It's actually really good. And one of the things I talked about the last time we did a live stream was the this bit. So this is the inside of the device, and when you look at that, I said, "Well, that looks fiddly. I wouldn't want to have to calibrate that very often, because you have to get your fingers in all this sort of stuff." But one of the selling points of it is I don't know how it works. I think I'll probably get one at some point. You have to you don't have to calibrate it, or only like once every year or something. It requires very little calibration. So look,
don't get me wrong, if it is very, very accurate, which is the issue that many of these automatic testers have. Some of them will show you a trend, but they don't show you like the official, like, proper number. If it is as accurate as they're saying, or you're saying it is, then it's worth the money. But
they claim like plus or minus figures, and it's all within the range you'd want. So
if it's as accurate as all the others, like, they all have a certain level of inaccuracy. All testing does, but I think some of them have much wider inaccuracies than others. And sometimes you'll get your KH on one day can be like 8, and all of a sudden you'll get this random 11, and then it will be 8 again. So what went on with that 11 one?
So I've not had that for a while. I've had that on a previous KH device, but what I find with them, I find my KH keeper, both of them, they're pretty accurate, but they do drift over time. So over the course of a year or so, especially if you're lazy like me and you don't calibrate them, when you test against the Hannah checker, after a long time, they're half a DKH, or maybe even as much as 1 DKH out. So then you need to recalibrate everything, and it'll bring it back in line.
I assume they use a pH probe the same as the other ones.
This, I don't think it does. I think it's just a color meter, like a Hannah checker.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't really know. I did look into it, but it was a while ago. But if this doesn't drift, and if they're saying that you don't need to calibrate it because we've set it up however they've set it up, I don't know. Then that's a good selling point. But it is expensive. But Reef Factory stuff is, if it's priced high, it's normally priced high for a reason. They don't just like try to rip off people. There'll be a reason. So it's expensive, but I'm looking forward to it. I still think it should be a good bit of kit.
As I said, you never know what the research is behind. They might have spent the last 10 years building this, and paying out for scientists or whatever to try and build it, and they have to recover some of their money. I remember talking to one of the manufacturers at Macna, and they said that the kit doesn't cost this much, but we spent probably 100 grand trying to just design and build it.
And that's so they're paying all those people when they're not selling anything.
Exactly. But we as buyers don't consider that. We just want as cheap as possible.
Exactly. I want to pay 50 quid. But there you go. So that's the first bit of equipment news. Is there one other piece of equipment news? There is. I know you love equipment. And the other thing was, you're just dripping with enthusiasm.
Oh yeah, just
return pump.
Oh, even better.
I know. So this is a Reef Factory return pump, and it's got this little, presumably that's the percentage thing. So basically this looks like a Jecod pump. I think it's a repurposed Jecod pump, recolored Jecod pump. But instead of their crappy Jecod boxes, that I like the buttons on them, but they're a bit sparky when you unplug them. They've added in these a fancy looking plug. It still looks like it's got a button on it, and I really hope that's a feed button, because you just can't beat a physical button on anything. I love apps in the hobby, but you can't beat a physical button. So I'm hoping that's what that is. But that's
do you use feed mode?
Yes, all the time.
Do you? See, I actually don't.
But not when I'm feeding. I very, very rarely do it when I'm feeding. But for example, if I want to feed like Reef Energy or Coral Food, I'll press it. Or if I want to take photos, I'll press feed mode, turn it off for 10 minutes,
Okay.
that sort of thing. So I use it all the time for that. Or if I'm putting a coral in and I want to be able to see without the water moving on the top, press feed mode, 10 minutes.
Yeah. I was just interested if you used it every day to feed them, because it's a feature that I've just never used.
No, it's too much of a pain in the backside to feed them. And generally, I find actually if when I do that, if I feed when the pumps are off, the fish are they're a bit more like, oh yeah, I'll go and have some food.
If it's running away from them, they're chasing.
If it's blown all over, exactly, they're a lot more enthusiastic. Oh, quick, get it. So I don't tend to do that. I did go through a spell on my water box of using the feed mode, because every time I fed, it would go down the weir box.
Yeah.
But instead I've just moved my pumps around so that doesn't happen anymore. So and it's too much effort with a feed mode. And also, if you can set, there are some return pumps that you can set on a schedule, so at the same point every day. So you can have, for example, an automatic feeder that feeds at 4 o'clock, and so at 3:55 you turn on feed mode on a schedule automatically every day. But I don't like the idea of my return pump going off for 10 minutes every day.
No, I agree with you.
What's the point? But anyway. But there we go. So that concludes the product news. And now we have some good news. Did you see?
I'm just excited we're no longer doing products.
I know, yeah. So of course, Jake Adams passed away probably.
I did see this,
6 months to a year ago, and his wife Windsor has given birth to their son.
Did you see what they called it? What they called him? Sorry,
Reef Jacob Adams is his full name.
Yeah, they called him Reef, which I thought was a cool name.
It's a nice name, yeah.
It suits the family
completely, and it makes me think of place your hands.
I don't know what that is. No idea.
But yeah, I thought it was really cool, and it
I
was
thought
just
this turned into Britain's Got Talent all of a sudden. Then
Britain does not have talent.
I was going to say Britain's got no talent, is what I actually meant.
Whatsoever. But that was really nice. It was just nice to see, and Reef Adams is a cool name. It suits him. It suits I don't know if it suits him.
It would be ironic if he grew up to hate reef tanks.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't. But yeah, I just thought it was cool, and it was nice, and it was that bit extra of sadness learning that his wife was pregnant when he passed away. But it's just kind of.
Well, it's nice that obviously he shares a healthy baby boy, as obviously now.
Exactly, and Jacob being his middle name, I presume Jake's full name was Jacob Adams. So
yeah,
I thought it was really nice. So good news as well. Also, the next thing, there was a coral event in the UK a couple of weeks ago. Love to Reef.
Yes.
So it was quite a small show. I think there were 100-ish people there.
That was bigger than I expected it to be. It
was a lot bigger, yeah.
I saw it in there was someone did a video of it, and I saw it on YouTube just very briefly. And compared to I think the previous year, there was much more people this time, I think, than last time. So that's a good sign. It's moving in the right direction.
Exactly. The last one they've only ever done two. I say it's one person running it. They've only ever done two. The first one was very small, like 30 people or whatever, I think. So but this one they showed a photo on Facebook, and the room was a big old room, and it was reasonably packed. I was quite impressed.
It was the room that we were in last time when we were there.
Yeah. And I had a load of vendors there.
Yeah, I saw that as well. I was very impressed with it was done by. I don't know how we're saying it was done by one man. I know it probably was done by one man.
He would have had help, of course.
Yeah, I don't know how much help there was, but I was impressed that because I always thought if I wanted to put on a show, I wouldn't know where to start.
No.
So the fact that he's done that, it's like fair play to him.
There we go. So there's if it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it's still at the stage. 100 people is regardless. It was really good. I'm very impressed. 100 people is still very small. But if it's growing and growing and growing, maybe next year it'll be 250 people.
Yeah,
maybe and the year after it'll be 1,000. You
get 100 fish people like fish weirdos in a room, you're gonna have a good time. You're with all like-minded people.
Exactly. Talking about fish tanks. Oh,
yeah,
wicked.
So I've been to these sorts of events before, not knowing anyone, and you just talk to random people, and you all share this one thing.
Yeah, it was the first place I met you and Michael Aarons.
That's true, actually. Yeah, that is true.
Indeed.
Yeah, actually, I met him at Macna. That was the first place I met him at Macna. I think they're really quite special, these shows, because you get people from all different, especially the big ones in America where you can get several thousand people going. You get people of all different races, like backgrounds, like financial backgrounds, where in terms of like your mate goes there polo in his private plane, and then you get like me going there in economy. So you get all these different like people all, and they all have this one thing in common. And because we're such a reclusive group of weirdos, we don't get that on a day-to-day basis. Normally, we're just annoying our partners with our fish tanks.
Yeah, and it's such a small hobby that it's not like if you were into cars, for example, you can talk to anyone about cars.
Yeah.
You know, with fish tanks, it's like, and especially saltwater fish tank. You talk to a freshwater hobbyist about saltwater, they're probably not that interested. So it's such a niche hobby. So to get people together is great. And yeah, I was impressed. It was a lot bigger than I thought it was. Still small, but a lot bigger than I thought it was. And it feels like, I'm sure it was a lot of effort, a lot of work, but it feels like it could be the start of something that could grow. So
yeah, well, all of these shows started somewhere, didn't they?
Exactly. And if anyone's watching that who went, let me know in the comment section, in the chat, sorry, how it was and if what it was like. Catch up with the chat just quickly. The song that I was singing, classic tune, says Les, and Simon Cowell says I'm through to the next round. So doing all right. Let's just have a quick look. There's another thing. Red Sea missed a trick with their pump. What pump? Should have had a sensor for the water level height in the weir. No more diaphragm valve comments. Oh, the return pump. Yeah, I think that's it. On paper, that's a really good idea. Having level sensors in the weir box. Yeah. So if it gets too high, the return pump gets turned down. And if it gets too low, the return pump gets turned up. But the reality is the adjustment of a return pump is not that fine, because you've got to make tiny, minute adjustments. So like if you've got a return pump with 10 stages of adjustments, that's not enough. It needs to have 300.
Sorry, I just started to fall asleep then. So you love all of this stuff. You love all the equipment stuff, and I just have no interest in it at all. I am purely a livestock person.
He's such a nerd. All right, we'll move on to the final piece of news, and this actually made the proper news. Yeah. Although I'm going to pull up the page for Reef Builders, and there was a mass urchin die-off in the Red Sea. Did you see that? There was some kind of pathogen that wiped out, I don't know, 98%. I don't think they gave a stat, but basically someone went down diving one day in the Red Sea, and they were like, "Dude, where are the urchins?" And there's basically none. It's wiped, and this has happened before. I'm sure it happened recently.
Yeah.
In fact, urchin die-offs have affected the Caribbean. Yeah. Okay. So maybe that was, I don't know. Maybe it's not. But either way, that there are a couple of things with that. So the significance of that is they're saying, look, this is a real problem for the reefs, because
they
don't eat algae. The algae will grow faster than the corals, and the corals might be in trouble. So very bad news for the Red Sea, potentially. Hopefully that will recover. But the other thing it highlights is how good urchins are.
Yeah, right? True.
And how important they are. Because so it's to the point, if there are no urchins, corals don't exist, basically, in the wild.
It's interesting because in different environments, so urchins are obviously essential there, but in a different part of the world where there's kelp forests, the urchins are a serious problem because they're eating just the bottom of the kelp, and the kelp floats off.
Detaches it.
Yeah. So in one part of the world, you need them essentially, otherwise there's a serious problem. And in another part of the world, they're causing a serious problem.
Yeah.
But what I did think when I read that was the people that are breeding corals are breeding thousands of urchins, and they don't know what to do with them. So I think we now know where to send them, because to breed Acropora, you need to have little tiny urchins, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, they all have to go somewhere, and now we know. But at least we know how to breed them, and they're obviously relatively easy to breed, I assume.
Yeah, I presume so. But because that's what's his face?
Jamie Craggs is doing it.
Jamie Craggs did that. Yeah. That's it. Because he tried big urchins, that didn't work. He tried small urchins, that didn't work. Yeah. So he had to breed them so they were tiny.
Yeah.
And it worked a treat, and that basically fixed everything. But my takeaway from this is obviously very bad news for the wild, but from a hobby perspective, if you've got algae in your tank and you don't have urchins, you're not allowed to complain.
This is your own problem, basically.
The urchins are just brilliant. They're just wicked.
Yeah, I do agree with you. They are not you don't want the long spine ones. They're a pain in the ass.
No,
because they're just too
urchins or whatever.
Yeah, and they're like little Roombas for your tank. They go around cleaning stuff. There was one. Oh, sorry.
Cool.
No, you.
I'm gonna change the subject. So there was one.
Oh, I was gonna say there was one thing on Reef Builders which you obviously, I think you might have missed it, where about vermitid snails. And
Yes, I saw that.
for me, I think that is like serious good news, because I have tried many things to see if I could get something that would eat vermitid snails, even like Toby pufferfish, to see if they would eat, or boxfish. But they found a snail that eats them, that actually eats them, rather than like pretend to eat them, like bumblebee snails.
Oh, don't say that, Ryan.
Yeah, I know. I'll have the bumblebee snail police after me, won't I?
Yeah, exactly. I think that. Oh, so it was 2 days ago. So actually, this. I was going to say I thought it was today, but yeah. So what was it? The only thing with that is, so the reason I paused, I didn't put that up because I thought, it's all well and good someone saying that, but I find it weird that they've only just been discovered. So I'm like, I don't. So I don't want. One article doesn't make me think wicked. That'll do it. I'm sure it's right.
I'm hopefully optimistic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think it's great, but I want to see it working in 100 tanks, and not just working in 100 tanks, but they also, once they finish the vermitids, they don't go after your trocus or your hermits or your
That's true. Yeah, that is true. That is true.
But potentially cool news. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did see it. And there we go. So and vermitids are just a pain to get rid of. They're one of those pests you just got to live with, I think.
Yeah, I literally, I've not found anything at all that will eat them. And what usually happens is they reach to a population size and then they all die out. And so it gets to a certain stage and they don't get worse. But it's it's one of those things that it's like everything has something which eats it except those.
Yeah.
So,
So and a question from Agol77. Oh, thanks, wife. Brought me a beer. Off to a good start.
There you go.
Right. That's good. So for Agol77 says, do you have problems with urchins eating coralline algae? I don't have problems with them eating coralline algae, but they do eat coralline algae. And the reason I'm saying that is because I don't see that as a problem. I know coralline algae is pretty, but I like the fact that it clears it out, it unclogs all the rock and all that sort of stuff. So I don't think that's a problem. But they do eat coralline algae. So you've just got to take the rough with the smooth and know that they will polish off your coralline. But that's a small price to pay for how effective they are. They also move you every now and then. They'll pull a frag plug off.
Yeah,
mine are always covered in zoas.
Yeah,
but it's fine. It's not. I've got enough zoas. I can have
that's how. See, that's how. Remember, you told me that your zoas spread around the tank. That's how it's happening.
It
must be the urchin. I've never had zoas float around and like detach and go somewhere else.
I see it all the time. They detach.
I do. It's probably. I'm telling you, it's that urchin.
It's when I've seen it's because they detach, and I see them detach. I've actually seen them detach and drift off. But urchins probably, I don't know, they've got the potential to do that. But urchins are just wicked. And the new rule is if you've got algae and you haven't got an urchin, you're not allowed to complain.
True. There you go.
So there we go. And that is the end of the news. And I think when you start the news, you need to do the jingle, and when you finish the news. You also need to do the jingle.
Yeah.
So the next feature, post any questions here, is questions from the chat. So start Q&A. There is now a question section that you can comment on in the chat. So post a question there and we will answer 5 or 10 of them. There was not that many people watching as there normally are, so we might answer all of them.
But I wonder why it's less. I suppose maybe literally it's a sunny day, isn't it? So people are. So it's only like 8 o'clock. You can still be in the garden at the moment.
If I wasn't doing this, I'd be out doing stuff. To be fair.
Yeah, it's true. Me too.
And with a cool, is that a blue? What's it called? Anyway, nice cat, whatever.
It's a ragdoll cat, I think.
Oh, it's a ragdoll. They're big fluffy things, aren't they? Yeah. Anyway, he says, "What do you feed urchins when they run out of algae?" You don't. This is like people talk about this with. What do you feed your snails or your crabs or something when they run out of food? You don't. They live. They're fine. They're never going to starve unless you put 1,000 in and they're out competing. But 1 is enough for most tanks. I would reckon. Certainly small tanks.
That's what's just happened on the water box tank. I've just for the first time seen the tiniest bit of algae and it was a couple of days ago, and then it's like spread, and I'm like, right, that's why I put the tangs in, because I'm not going to wait until it's like this long and then go, oh, maybe I should put the tangs in. I thought just nuke it straight away, 3 tangs, obliterate it, and then it'll keep on top of it.
I think the cats are Burmese. He said Burman or Burmese, which is cool. Anyway, and this guy had 2 urchins die. Probably wasn't starvation. I would wager to guess. They don't like salinity changes one little bit. So that might have been it. But anyway, maybe it was starvation, but you don't feed them. And if they die, that means that you've completed algae.
Yeah.
But yeah, my urchin destroyed all my softies. That's one of those comments that I'm skeptical of. Shell smuck, I'm sure you know your tank better than I do, but I've never heard of an urchin eating a coral.
No, to be fair, me either. It probably destroyed them by like pulling them all off the rocks.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, there we go. First time for everything. So next up is the mass debate. And this isn't really like so the question is, which is better, reef keeping or snorkeling? Yeah. And the answer is snorkeling. I mean, reef keeping.
Snorkeling.
I know, yeah. But so the answer is reef keeping, because reef keeping is awesome. But
basically, you just wanted to talk about your holiday, didn't you?
That is not the case. Not interested in that. But just so I obviously did a fair amount of snorkeling on the holiday. Yeah. And it's one of those things where if you ever watch camera reviews from good photographers, they will often say to you, instead of spending £1,000 on the greatest next lens, or £500 on the latest camera, spend £1,000 on a holiday to Iceland or somewhere beautiful where you can go and take photos of great scenery. Yeah. And that is where I thought about this from, because if you want to spend, and I'm the hypocrite of all hypocrites here, you want to spend £2,000 on lights, don't do it. It won't make that much of a difference to your tank. Instead, spend £2,000 or £1,000 or 500 quid on a snorkeling holiday. Yeah. Because it's
or on coral and fish.
Or on coral and fish. But for the purposes of this video, snorkeling holiday. I went to Mauritius. That's the Indian Ocean. It's down by Zanzibar, off the southeast tip of Africa. Yeah. So Indian Ocean. So we walked along. One of the first days we were there, just on this like a little like a port, very small port, just a few boats around with a pub here and there and that sort of stuff, restaurants. And you look in the water and you're like, that's a bloody sailfin tank. That's a convict tank. And they're just, and I think there might even be a powder blue tank. All these fish, and it's like algae blennies just all over the place. Yeah.
Did you get your net out?
No, I should have done. I was saying that. We found this little on our hotel. There was a beach on the hotel, and there were these rocks, just like massive rocks, right at where the tide comes in. So they were always wet, but sometimes the water would wash away and all that. And every day we went there were blennies, algae blennies, like babies, a mother, and all this sort of stuff, just always there. And it was just so cool.
I bet you were a nightmare for your wife. She's like, oh, this is our honeymoon, and you brought me here, and you knew what was going to be here.
She was like, we went and saw the blennies every day, and it was always her saying, let's go and see the blennies. But you look down and there's raccoon, butterfly fish. I went on the beach, out of our hotel, put your head under the water, Picasso triggerfish there. Yeah, those of them around.
Did you see the emperor angels?
Didn't see any.
That's what I remember from scuba diving there. I remember the biggest emperor angel I've ever seen.
Yeah, in the place.
Because obviously all the fish are massive, aren't they?
So a lot of the ones I saw were actually really small, but then when you go a bit further out, they're big. Yeah. And so Scopas tangs were 7-8 inches at least, maybe bigger. It's hard to tell because they're a bit away, but just they get big. But the fish I saw goatfish, loads of damsels, wrasses. What are the chromis with the black spots on them? Yeah. And actually, one thing about, so you see the natural behavior, and the chromis, they don't school at all. They're spread like meters apart. Yeah. If something comes on and scares them and they think there's a predator,
together. Exactly,
and then they're like, oh mate, get away from me. So they're not a shoaling fish really.
Did you see any of those? I don't know. I think they might call trumpet fish, like really long, thin fish, massive, like feet long. Yes, I think they might be yellow.
Small ones. Oh no, maybe not. Then I thought they were kind of silvery coloured.
Yeah.
They look like mini barracuda. Maybe it was
Yes,
mini
yeah,
barracuda.
something like that. I mean, they might have been yellow. I might have, like, as I said, it was a long time ago. But those are some of the things that I remember from going there. We could have have gone to very similar places.
Yeah, maybe it's not. It's a small island.
Yeah, and because I think there's like one main place where all the hotels are, so it's entirely possible that we could have been. It's in the south, I think. I was where I went.
It might have grown a bit because there were hotels everywhere now.
Oh,
but
really?
we were in the south, on the southwest coast. But
Yeah.
but it's just, there's just all these fish everywhere. Moorish idols, checkerboard wrasse. Saw a massive checkerboard wrasse. They get big.
Yeah.
I've seen a big one in captivity.
Do you feel that you can? I've always said this, that you enjoy it more because you know
you can identify them.
You know what they are. You know whether they're a problem to keep. You know how big you see them in the shop. You like. There's so many things, so much more that you can appreciate.
Absolutely. And what
I
found.
I was gonna say, as opposed to someone who is seeing these things for the first time.
Exactly. So we did a boat trip on one day, and there was, I think, 8 of us on this boat, and we stopped for a snorkel stop. Yeah. And it got to the point I was out there just like constantly face down, back up, just the whole time. And it got to the point that everybody else was on the boat, and they were like, Alex. Yeah. What? So and everybody else was out there. They were looking down. And they're going, "Oh, that's a cool fish," and that's it. And they probably didn't look. So I was over by the aquapora corals. They were massive. It was a big lagoon, so really still massive aquapora with like polyp extension, all this sort of stuff. And I was fascinated by that. And I was looking at everything in massive detail. I found it really interesting identifying fish. I could probably identify like only 20% because there were loads of, I don't know what that is, but it was cool when you see like a Moorish idol or a checkerboard wrasse or whatever.
Yeah,
I saw loads of wrasse that I didn't know, but it was just interesting. And like you say, being able to think, I know how big they get, I know how difficult they are to keep, and also seeing the aquapora with all their polyps out, full proper polyp extension, middle of the day. I was like, oh, interesting. So they're not just doing it at night in the wild.
when I'm scuba diving, I used to go quite frequently, but you go with a group of people, or like maybe there might be 4 people, and they're all like, "Oh, look at that stingray, or that. Do you see that shark? Do you see that big?" And I'm like, "Did you see that nudibranch?"
Yeah, exactly.
I remember as clear as it. So I look really in the rocks and around the corals and that. I'm like looking for I've seen thousands of tangs or whatever, but if I see a nudibranch, oh, that's like I've had a good day. If I see it.
Completely. And that's so like starfish are what the like normal people like. Oh, look, it's a starfish. But but there were so many things like things like nudibranchs and those sorts of things. Even the corals, right? So Mauritius isn't like a paradise like the like Indonesia or whatever, or the Barrier Reef. But you put your head down straight away. There's parites everywhere, massive parites. And I was like, oh, cool. I was trying to look to see if there were any of those little the
crabs.
Exactly, the crabs, the hermit crabs.
Oh, you're doing the Christmas tree worms. Yeah.
But I couldn't see that close. But there were those. There were toadstool corals, these aquapora, and that stuff. I'm looking at going, wow, that's awesome. Everybody else would be like, oh, it's a brown rock.
Yeah. So I think you've just answered my question, definitely, because I always wondered, as I said, if you see a yellow tang or a regal angel for the first time, it's like it's an event, so it's exciting for that person to see it, whereas we've seen loads of these before. So I wondered if it actually diminishes your time because you're not seeing things for the first time. But then, as you said, there were lots of other things that you see for the first time you didn't know what they were, and you probably I remember seeing a yellow catfish when I was scuba diving in Australia. It looks as clear as anything. It was a yellow catfish. I've never been able to find anything that resembles that fish. It looked like just a catfish, but it was gold colored. I've never been able to find it. So
funny, yeah. And you see, this is the thing. There's the variety of fish is just vast there.
Yeah.
So there are loads, and there are some fish that I think, why aren't they in the hobby? Because they don't look too big.
Yeah.
And they're quite cool. So, I'm sure there's a reason, but it's funny because like the people who collect the fish, they've got so the people out there, they've got no idea. So I went back and I asked about the corals, and they were like, yes, coral, mate. Even like some of the wildlife. We had a tour on the first tour guide on the first day. He was like, oh yeah, we've got a load of monkeys on the island. I was like, oh cool, what kind of monkey? And he was like, oh, just normal monkeys. I was like, oh god. And it turns out it was macaque monkeys. But they because it's like if you went into my garden and there was a collared dove or like some kind of weird bird, I'd be like, yeah, it's a finch.
bird.
Exactly, you wouldn't care.
Pigeon.
Yeah, and they don't have the same interest as you and I do. So this was all snorkeling. A few people in chat are talking about scuba diving, and I've done scuba diving in Thailand before. The first time I did that, or well, the time I did that, it was, in a way, it was slightly disappointing. Because
Really?
I'm used to these spectacular colours, and you go underwater, and it's like it's all brown and yellow.
Yeah, but
you get, that's like when you get past that, it's just like I saw loads of pistol shrimp and gobies in the wild. It's the coolest thing. So yeah, but like there are parts of it that's like, my tank looks better than that.
There's some things that like really stick with you on these events. There was two that I can think of now. One of them, there was all these brown acropora, and then there was this one bright orange piece about this big, and I just thought, that is what people are collecting. They're looking amongst all this brown stuff, and they want that one orange piece. And the other thing that I saw, and look, even to this day, it makes me sound crazy. It's like when someone goes, I saw a UFO. I saw a purple tang in Australia. Purple tangs are not from Australia. I know what a purple tang is. I've had one for bloody years. It was like this big. It wasn't like a fleeting thing. It was like swimming around, like as clear as anything. But people were like, no, you don't get purple tangs from Australia. I'm like,
it's there, I promise.
I was like, I definitely saw it. Now, whether that came from like some ocean that happened to come over, or whether someone
released it,
someone released it, I definitely saw a purple tang.
Interesting, yeah. There were a couple of things that. One thing I found is that there was one coral I saw that was awesome. Most of it was like Porites, which is just brown, or Aquapora that was kind of beige and all this sort of stuff. But there was one coral. It was like a Lobophilia. Lobophilia? No. No. There's a about bollards, barrelbanky maybe. No. Anyway, this meaty, fleshy.
I've just realised you don't know what an LPS is, do you? So
we'll come back onto that. Meaty, fleshy LPS coral of some kind. And
one of those long polyp stonies, eh?
That's the one. And it would look really cool. But my mask was filling up with water, so I went up to empty my mask, looked back down again. The current had moved me, and I couldn't find it. I spent 10 minutes trying to find it.
Oh, really?
I was like, I was here 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
So you must get that when you're swimming and looking for like this tenuous with all these bright colours and all that. So it's difficult.
Yeah. I remember I seeing Trachophilia rolling around in the ocean, literally just being hammered. Oops, that would have been really loud, probably on the microphone. Just hammered by the ocean, just rolling around. I picked one up and put it into this little rock, like wedged it in.
I remember you said that. Yeah, I saw loads of. Sorry.
Oh, so I wondered, is like a 99% chance it's not still there, but I wonder if it's now just this massive piece.
Yeah. Hello. The one I saw loads of. For heaven's sake! I'm still here, by the way, and everyone can still see me and hear me.
I can hear you. I can't see you.
No, I know, but I'll turn it back on in a sec. The camera's overheating.
No, I quite like it like this.
I know.
It's it's much better, I think.
But there were loads of like fungi skeletons knocking around.
Oh yeah,
and like tongue coral skeletons and all that sort of stuff. So there was lots of that, and they were all like at shore and stuff, so they're all washed in.
Yeah,
and there were loads of big, massive pieces of live rock that just washed up on the shore. I was like, I'd have that if I lived here. But yeah,
I wonder if the locals do just go pop down and just grab a fish, and was that something they probably don't? They don't have a tank over there. They just go in the ocean.
Exactly. Yeah, I bet they don't, and they're not that interested. If it's on your doorstep, it's like, well, whatever. It's a bit more exotic to us, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't keep a squirrel as a pet, would you?
Illegally, I don't think you're allowed to.
Well, there you go.
But no, you're right. I wouldn't keep a squirrel as a pet.
No, for a number of reasons. But there we go. So it was just wicked. I just think it's well worth going. If you've never been snorkeling or scuba diving is a bit more intense, a bit more prep, and a bit more expensive, and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But there are loads of places that don't have to be expensive with snorkeling. Red Sea isn't that far for Europe. Florida. In America, the Caribbean, there's loads of places you can go, and it's just worth, next time you go on holiday, it's worth thinking about finding somewhere that you can go off for a day and do a bit of snorkeling. It's just wicked.
It's interesting. I had this conversation with my dad today. My dad is someone who doesn't appreciate anything. No, he's not a bad person. He's like, oh, go to Paris, Eiffel Tower. Yeah, it's just a building. It's like nothing. There's nothing exciting. It was interesting. We went out for coffee this morning, and he said, the best experience he's ever had, ever. Like, of one of those experience things. So not like having kids or whatever, like those experiences was scuba diving. And he enjoyed it so much he went the next day. He's never done it since. But he literally just said it was like a life-changing experience for him. Because he just said there's this whole world underwater you just don't know about. And most people don't. I'm like, Dad, I've been keeping these in your house for the last 12 years. You're telling me you don't know about it.
Watch my videos.
He has no interest in the tank at all. Never, ever had any interest in it.
That's funny.
So, each to their own.
But yeah, it's just wicked, and it's worth doing if you ever get the chance. And so Mark Swan says he saw a purple tang in Egypt. He was in Hurghada last month. They're in the Red Sea, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where
they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But there you go. And actually, so I did saw a question I was going to post up. I can't think says, do you think we underestimate what corals like in the hobby? They get beaten in the wild and are thrown under stupidly harsh low tides, yet we all say they can't withstand so much. This goes about back to kind of, people always say, hey, look, you want to recreate the ocean, but you don't want to recreate the ocean really at all. You kind of do, but you don't want, because there are some corals that are in the shallows that are exposed to light. You wouldn't want to turn your pumps off so the aquapora are exposed for 3 hours a day. You don't want to blast them with 2000 par. Okay, they might be able to tolerate that, and that might be what they do within the wild, an extreme flow. But what you want to do is find the sweet spot of what they deal with well in captivity. So I don't think we do underestimate it. I think, well, we probably do to a sense, to a point, in that if you ever seen a scully in the wild, the flow they get is insane. And I've got scullies here that don't like flow. I can tell you that they don't. So they can deal with more in the wild in some instances, but we're not trying to recreate the wild. That's the way I see it. We are to an extent, but you don't want to think, if your philosophy on reef keeping is I must recreate what it's like in the wild. I don't think that's the best way to do it.
Good luck.
Exactly. Yeah. In a 2-foot cube.
Because even the KH is much lower, like the alkalinity is much lower in the wild than we have in our tanks usually.
Like 6.5 or something, isn't it?
Something like that.
0 phosphate, 0 nitrate, but there's
it's like you're literally, if you think about that, you're on a knife edge. If you're running your tank like that, you're on a knife edge. You're like right on the very edge. But
in terms of lighting, because you mentioned lighting in particular. Lighting, if you blast your corals with 1000 par, they'll bleach. I'll tell you that straight away. You might be able to, if you bumped it up 1 par every day for 3 years, maybe they'd be okay. But then if you put a new coral in, it's going to bleach.
The thing that I do think people underestimate is that corals are hardier than we think they are.
They're funny because they're both extremely hardy and extremely finicky, but they can put up with a lot of abuse.
It's like sometimes, obviously, when I ship corals, the corals will arrive and I get a message from someone with a picture of their Hannah checker in the pot going, this coral is 23 degrees. And I know why they're doing that. They're going, this coral's too cold. I want to warn you for it. When the corals arrive here from Indonesia, the temperature's 16 degrees. So it's like,
and it's probably gone up from 10 degrees when it was on the plane or whatever.
The other thing I find really interesting, when you get corals from Indonesia, the salinity is all over the place. Like it can be really, really low sometimes. It's not like the salinity of our tanks.
No. I would have thought if anything it would be high because they'd get evaporation whilst they're in a holding vat or something. But...
I don't know what it is. Next time I've got a box coming on the 16th. I'll test the salinity and I'll send you a picture and I'll show you. I don't know what it is.
Post that on Instagram. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, true. I could do the temperature of them and the salinity.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, they can survive a lot more than we think they can. It's the sudden shock that they can't usually survive.
And perhaps that's the point that I can't think was making, is that they actually can. They are hardier than we think. That's the thing. It's the sudden shocks, because they can be extremely delicate, but also they can put up with a lot of abuse, especially soft corals.
To some extent, it's the same as the fish, and I've said this many, many times. The fish that come in are the survivors of the hobby, the ones that have come in through the chain of going from one tank out the ocean to a tank into another tank into another tank. These are not hardy fish. They've gone through quite a lot to get to us. So look after them. Like, give them what they need. That's the one thing I've tried to push as much as possible. It sounds like I'm going, you're not doing enough, but maybe some people aren't doing enough. If you're going into a shop going, I don't know what that fish is, I'm going to buy it, you're not doing enough.
Completely. But we've all done that.
Oh yes, 100%.
But
And
you need to.
even I get carried away. I bought 2 angels, having no idea I was going to bring 2 angels home.
But and there are times, and I don't think this has been that recent, but certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, I've bought, like, for example, I've bought a wrasse.
Yeah.
Or have I actually done that? I've either done this or I've thought about doing it. And because you think to yourself, I know what wrasses are like. Wrasses are peaceful. They're fine. They're not going to eat corals. And then you get it home and you're like, oh God, this grows to 12 inches long and it's going to eat all my cleanup crew.
Yeah.
So you can make assumptions. A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing sometimes. So you can make assumptions.
100%.
But it's fine. You can make those mistakes and you can be impulsive. But if you do, you need to do your research afterwards, which I think most people do. But I'm sure there are some people who are just like, oh, well, tough luck.
Literally, I was excited when I saw the Majestic and the Blue Face, and I bought them, and then I think I might have sent you a picture going, look what I just bought. And then I got home, I thought, these two this could go really wrong. They might really not like each other. And there was every possibility, and it was just luck that they were basically all right with each other, and they're still fine. But it was entirely possible that they could have chased each other to death, basically. And then I had to be willing to deal with, like, if it were going to be that bad, I have to be willing to strip it apart to take one of them out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the right way to do it, because you've got.
I got carried away. Definitely, I got carried away when I bought those fish. I was like, yeah, let's do this, because the tank had no fish in it. I just wanted something to go in it.
Yeah, you do get impatient. It's all well and good saying, hey, nothing good happens quickly in a reef tank, and but it's like, yeah, I know, but I want fish. So it can be difficult to resist things sometimes. Actually, I'm going to put that back on. I'm going to change it to blue. There we go. Another question, and this is from Agel77. So I don't know if you've seen this. He stumbled across a video of Jake Adams on coral acclimation yesterday.
Yeah.
Have you seen that video?
I might remember it from a long time ago.
Yeah, so it's almost like a parody. He's like, hey, I'm going to show you how to acclimate a coral. Here you do. This is the coral. You take it out, you throw it in your tank.
Yeah.
He doesn't mess around. And so he says, so the question is, what are your views on his approach of just chucking him into a new tank without acclimating?
He's right. He is actually right. You might, we're going to disagree on this.
I'm not saying he's wrong, but I think there's a caveat to it. So go on, tell me why he's right.
Because I've done it hundreds of times with thousands of pieces. And as I said, the salinity is all over the place when you get the corals. The temperature's all over the place. The only thing I do, I take them out, I warm them up to the temperature of the tank over the course of like an hour. And then I take the corals out, I dip them, and then I put them in. And I dip them in the tank water. So I don't do any. Now, don't get me wrong. When I send out the corals and I have a little like leaflet, little piece of paper saying this is what you need to do. You need to acclimate them slowly over the course of this time. That is because people wouldn't think I was very professional if I went just chuck them in. But that's the reality. That's what all fish shops do. Fish shops aren't there. Well, I shouldn't talk with absolutes, but most fish shops aren't there. Adding a little bit of
corals a week. Yeah, exactly.
No, and they generally the way how they bring water into their system and expel water into their system, they essentially acclimate themselves, and that's what he says in the video, I believe. Yeah,
because of osmosis and all that sort of stuff. So the shops normally temperature acclimate corals because they'll float them. Yeah. And I've had corals. I have had corals when I've put them in and they've stripped straight away.
Yeah.
I suspect the one thing I think I don't think that's necessarily because of parameters. Maybe it's temperature, maybe it isn't. The main thing you've got to worry about is light, I think.
Yes, definitely, 100%.
So if you put in a new coral and you just wang it in and there's far too much light, it's going to strip.
Yeah,
especially aquariums. So that is the caveat I would say to it, or one of the caveats is say you just don't mess around with light. Too much light will kill a new coral, especially if it's used to 100 pi in the last tank and you've got 400. But I don't think there's any harm in at least temperature acclimating a coral. I never drip it. I float it in the tank for half an hour, whatever, an hour, sometimes a day because I forget it. And then I dip it and put it in. So that's all I do. I don't do anything apart from temperature. But I don't think it's good. I don't think it's best practice for most people to take it out and throw it in, because I think it encourages you to be a bit more lackadaisical. I think it's better to be a bit more diligent.
I agree. I think that if you want to be sure that you've done everything that you can possibly do to make the transition as easy as possible, so that if a coral does die, you go, I did everything I could do. Because if you just throw it in and it dies, then you might be like, well, maybe it's because I just threw it in, but it might have died anyway, whether you threw it in or not.
I think someone as experienced as Jake Adams should do that. Or well, I'm
Yeah.
not saying they should do that, but he can do it. But what would you say if you sent someone an Aquapora, a brand new Millipora?
I told you on my leaflet, it tells people to acclimate them.
So if they said, "Oh, I didn't acclimate it, I just put it straight in and it stripped in an hour," would you say, "Okay, I'll give you a refund," or would you say, "Mate"?
I have to be careful what I say because
it depends on each of the circumstances, of course.
Like 9 times out of 10, so this happened the other day, and so there was a coral. It went to the customer. They didn't appear to be any problem. There didn't appear to be enough of a problem for them to contact me to say there's a problem. The next day, they sent me a picture and said, "Look, this coral does this coral look okay to you?" And I replied saying, "Look, it's dead." So I called the guy and I said, first, I said, "Are all the other corals I sent you fine?" He said, "Yeah, they're all fine." Because generally, if you're going to lose a coral in transit, it's because of heat, and you'll lose the whole box. You don't lose one; you lose all of them. And I said, "Did it smell when there was a problem?" And he said, "No, everything appeared to be fine." Because you know that dead coral smell.
Oh, it's horrible.
So even though this coral cost £160, I just looked on an individual basis. I said, "Look, I will replace it for you." Which I reckon a lot of people wouldn't do that because the rules are once it goes in your tank, pretty much industry standard. Once it's in your tank, it's your problem. Now with acros, I look at it on a case-by-case basis, going back to your question. Because I don't know if that acro is going to a tank and the alkalinity is 15 on that tank. There's no way they can tell me it's 8. There's no way of me ever knowing.
And have you tested it, or did you test it 2 months ago?
Yeah. So generally speaking, I never want anyone to have a bad experience. So I try to, and I don't want people to abuse me saying this, but I try to look after people. And as I said, the coral was £160. I said to him, "Don't worry, I've got a similar one. I'll give it to you."
What coral was it?
It was a Trachophilia, is what it was. Okay. And I'd had it, I think, for months and months and months. I think at least since January, so 6 months. Because I hadn't been to that supplier for a long time. But what the nice thing was, the guy just went, "Oh, I didn't expect that. Thank you very much for doing that." And then about 2 hours later, I had a massive order come in, and it was the guy going, "I really appreciate what you did for me." And that shows that if you look after people, they look after you.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
there will be occasionally there'll be someone who takes advantage, but it'll be 1 in 1,000.
Yes, yeah.
And the other 999 will do what this guy did, and will appreciate.
I have had it in the past where someone's contacted me a few days later, and I go, "Look, like 3 or 4 days later it's a bit harsh to be coming back to me going, this is it." But if it's like something I've got loads of, then I'll just go, "Look, I'll sort you out a piece on the next box that you order." Whereas if it's like a one of a kind piece, is hard, if you see what I mean, to be able to replace that. I try my best to treat people how I would want to be treated.
Exactly, yeah, which is basically what it says in the Bible, right?
Is it? I don't know. I've never read it, so
that's. I mean, I'm not a Bible type, but I think that's like the overriding message. Be nice.
Yeah.
Like if you could summarize the Bible in 2 words, be nice.
No, I look at it very simply from a business point of view. If I say I'm not going to help this customer, that customer is not coming back. And we're such a small community, I want every possible customer I can have. So if I lose one, especially someone who spends money on not a cheap coral, then I'd rather look after them.
Yeah, because you'd be gutted if you'd spent that money and it had died, wouldn't you? So
I would.
But basically, I think the main thing is I wouldn't recommend that as best practice to most people. I'm not saying it's the wrong way of doing it, but and the 2 things I would absolutely worry about are temperature, which I don't think Jake Adams worried about, but light. Massive light is just don't give it too much light.
I think it gives people a sense of security and to some extent that almost placebo effect, that sense of security is valuable enough for the time it takes to do it.
Absolutely. If it makes you feel good, it makes you feel more comfortable, do it.
Yeah, even if there's no scientific basis of it actually working or being required, because I said I didn't do it for any of them.
No.
And neither do the shops. So
because it doesn't do any harm. If you drip, I don't drip corals, but if you drip acclimate them, it doesn't do any harm.
No. All it is your effort. If you're willing to put the effort in, what's the problem?
Yeah. It's more harm if you've got a fish in a bag for 6 hours and you're dripping it slowly. That's more likely to do harm.
Yeah.
But if it's a coral, it's not going to be releasing ammonia or whatever. So just don't worry. And I sometimes leave a coral in the sump for literally. I get it back at 10 a.m. I forget about it and remember it at 10 p.m.
Yeah,
and it's fine. The matter. A couple of things. Firstly, Northeast Adventures. Thank you for the super chat. It says such fun watching you guys. Thanks you guys for all the good advice. Well, thank you very much. Kind of you to say. And secondly, is questions from the chat from this little question thing. Lots of questions about marriage.
About what marriage?
Yeah. Which I'm not going to answer because
I'll leave you to answer those. I have no opinion.
Well, I have 2 weeks of experience of it, so
That's true.
It's great. It's easy. Do it. But your wife brings you beers apparently. So
I was gonna say what did you fall out over for her to come bring you a beer today?
And other things. I'm moving house. James says I'm moving house soon and need to move a water box 90.3. Any tips? Break it down, sell everything, and move the tank with no water in it, and start again. Moving a tank. I moved a 120-litre tank with just a few corals and fish. It was literally the worst day of my life. I hated every second of it. Took an enormous van. You couldn't believe how much space I needed. Stressful as hell. Hated it. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
Now times that by 10 because I moved a 1,000-litre tank.
Yeah. Did you?
I did. Yeah.
Did you lose any animals? Did you lose any corals?
I think I lost one SPS colony, which was like a Hystrix or something, and I lost like one goby. It was like a really odd thing to look. I remember putting all the fish in. It was like probably by the time I finished, it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. And the tank was so murky because I kept all the water and all the sand and everything that you literally couldn't see anything at all. I had no idea if anything was alive. And the next morning, everything was fine except this one goby. So
one fish. But it's stressful. And James said,
definitely,
that's not the answer I was looking for.
It takes a few years off your life, trust me. In reality, if you want to know what it's actually like, the best thing you can do, get as many containers as you can. You might spend £60 or even more on a big blue container. You can fill the whole thing up with water, move all the fish into it. Don't try and do it with small containers.
Go on, sorry.
When I say don't do it with small containers, you want to be able to move these containers. So do it in a way that you can move them.
I found I didn't have enough heaters because you want to make sure everything's like roughly the same temperature. And if you've got 10 vats, it's like you're never going to get them all the same temperature.
True, yeah.
But the other thing I found was, doesn't matter how big your container is. If you've got a 10-foot high container with a foot of water in it, when you drive, it'll splash everywhere and go everywhere.
You need a lid. Yeah, that's true.
And not just a lid. I've had them with lids. Water gets out. You need to have like a rubberized tight seal lid. And then you're thinking, is it going to stop the air going in? And
no, I use what's that silver tape, like duct tape.
Yeah,
if you duct tape it, nothing comes out.
But so it can be done, and plenty of people have done it. I've done it, but I hated every minute of it. And if I was starting it again, I wouldn't do it. I would have broken down the tank because it was only 6 months old, that tank. It wasn't that special. And use it as an excuse to start again. Sell off all the livestock because there's bound to be a couple of corals in your tank that are spreading that you don't like, or a fish that you're like, oh, I don't really like him. So it's a chance to start afresh. And even if my tank that's 5 years old, aquapora and all this sort of stuff, I'd still break that down. I wouldn't. It's not so special that I think I must keep it.
We're slightly different as well. I am a bit more sentimentally attached to my fish than you are.
I have no heart.
If you have a good relationship with a fish shop, break the tank down, take all the fish to the fish shop. If you have a good offer them money.
Hell of a relationship, yeah.
I've had like the relationship with my fish shop I've had for like probably 16 years now. So we're like good friends. But even when it was like 4 years, I just go, look, how much money for me to bring my fish in for you to look after them for 2 weeks? Because don't expect them to do it for free. They're not a charity. If you offer them money, the chances are they'll do it, and then you can keep your fish.
Cross my palm with silver.
Yes. Yeah.
So there you go. So there you go, Les. It's a nightmare though. Is my answer, and I just sorry, not Les, Mike. Mike,
Yeah.
James. I'll get there eventually. But anyway, all right. Best way to start a refugium in a sump. You've never had a refugium, so
No.
I'll answer this one. Put a string of Kato algae in there. Put a light on it. Job done. That's it.
Simple as that. There must be
Really easy.
There must be some things that make it more. I thought you meant to have it tumbling.
Getting it tumbling it looks wicked, and for a week that's fine, but it'll get too big and then it'll attach itself to. It's not tumbling. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to tumble. Is it better?
Yeah.
Maybe it's more effective. Yeah, but we're talking 10%. You don't worry about that. So I wouldn't bother with getting it tumbling. Just put it in somewhere. You don't want it. I don't think it matters if it's downstream or upstream of the skimmer. Personally, I don't think that affects things massively. I think you're into marginal gains at that point. What you want to do is make sure it can't escape. So there's some kind of weir comb or something on a baffle, so it can't escape and get clogged in your skimmer clogged in your return pump, because it does clog pumps. Yeah. But basically, just get a ball of Kato. People talk about like clean Kato and spending hundreds of pounds on all this sort of stuff. Just buy some from your local fish shop. If it's got aptasia, you're going to get that at some point anyway. I don't stress about that sort of thing. If you're desperately keen, then you can buy it from America and import it for $200 or something insane. But just get a ball of algae from someone, from a colleague, from someone you know, or from your local fish shop. Put it in your sump, put a light on it. The Tunzi 883 one is really good, but any refugium light, you can get one off Amazon for 20 quid, purple light. They're brilliant. Yeah. Any light will grow it, and that's it. Job done.
And if you think about it, in theory, if you're worried about pests and stuff, the smaller the amount you get, the less likely you are to get something that you don't want.
Which is why I said put one string in the first place, because then that's it's going to grow. It'll take a bit of time, but not that long.
Do you know why they tumble it? I've just worked out why they do it.
To expose it all to the light.
Yeah, the light. Then it will grow from all angles rather than just upwards.
Yeah. But it's not necessary. The algae refugiums are very effective, even if they're not tumbling. And I found that you can get them tumbling when it's a small ball.
Yeah.
But a week later, it's too big, and you're tearing your hair out trying to get rid of it.
Have you seen the ones where they use dragon breath algae?
No.
They look amazing. Dragon breath algae looks. I think it's dragon breath. I think it's called
the red stuff. Yeah.
The red. Yeah. That looks amazing. I think Top Shelf Aquatics, I think, using.
I bet that's not as effective as Kato though, because you often see every now and then someone will say on a Facebook page, "Hey, I've had a brilliant idea. Why don't I put Xenia in my sump as a refugium instead?" And it's on the face of it, it's like that's a really good idea because it absorbs nutrients, no doubt.
Yeah.
Is it as effective as Kato? Maybe, maybe not, but it'll probably be fairly effective, and it looks cool. But the reality is, no one's done it. Because it's
for a reason,
because it will escape and it will end up in your display tank, and it's a pain to get rid of, and blah blah blah. So, so just use Kato, a ball of Kato, put it in your sump, put a light on it, 20 quid off Amazon. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt.
There you
go. I actually have an uncle called Robert, so Bob is literally my uncle. P2 says, "Can I post these questions? Can I share them? I think I can." Select question. Bosh. There we go. P2 says, thoughts on Moorish idols becoming popular. 2 sold.
It's not come up for me. Just so you know.
It's in the chat. Reef 2 were sold at Reefkeeper Moss End last week. Are they becoming more popular?
They are. I know a few people who've had them recently, but I don't know where are they coming from?
I saw 2 in Mauritius. Maybe they're coming from there.
No, what I mean is because for the longest time, no one was really bringing them in. They were on Maidenhead's like a list, there's like a list of things like red-tailed catfish they don't bring in. Moorish idols were on that list.
Yeah, okay.
But I know 3 of my clients who've gone, oh yeah, I got a Moorish idol. Maybe I don't go to enough fish shops anymore because, I've not seen a Moorish idol in years. I don't know if you've seen. Did you say you saw them at Moss End?
I saw them on Facebook. They posted. Ed posted a photo of 2. I've not noticed. I don't really look out for them. They're quite big, even in the shops. They're not small. But thoughts on it? I don't want one. I think they're cool.
Yeah,
I wouldn't buy one because I feel like they're a pain in the ass.
If I got one and put it in the angelfish tank, which people have suggested, it would immediately lose its fin That's the problem. So you do
Right,
see
okay.
some people have them. Even, do you remember there was like Angelica's Reef, who's got all those amazing
Yeah.
fish? She has one. And interestingly, I saw it on the post the other day. I went, oh, look, there's fins now gone. Which it wasn't. I looked back at a previous post. So within the last month, something has nipped its fin. So it's now disappeared. And I don't think they grow back. Like, well, if something keeps nipping it, they're not going to grow back, are they?
No, okay. And if it did, it would take a long time, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're cool. I don't have a problem with it as such. I don't know, but
they only look cool to me when they're like a complete healthy specimen. When they're
bright yellow and black and
well,
white.
when they're swimming around, they've got their hair cut because there's the long fin's been cut off. I just think it looks like a damaged fish. So what's the purpose of having a damaged fish in your tank?
Fair enough. I don't like big fish, and they're quite big.
Yeah,
but I don't have a problem with it. If people look after them properly, which is the hard part, then fine. But you've got to do your. It's one of those fish that you'd never recommend to a beginner because it's tricky to keep.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I know. And Charles Bettany says my local Maidenhead would get me a moist idle, but it was
under the counter.
Under the counter job. Oh, really? Where I'd have to collect it straight away, and it would never hit their tanks. Okay, because they're worried about it. Well, that's probably the right attitude, but I don't.
Well, it's almost like a custom order. So they're going, we don't want to risk bringing this in. If you want to give it a go, that's up to you.
Next question is from Luke, and it is a really broad question that we're not really going to answer. Just upgraded to a Red Sea Reefer 250. Any tips?
That is a very broad question.
Broad question. And
watch loads of YouTube about that video.
There are two really good channels I can think of.
Well, I only know one. It's not
Reef
mine.
Dudes and Coral Euphoria.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, any tips? The thing is, people always say, take it slow, nothing good happens quickly in a reef tank, all this sort of stuff. And that is right. And patience, blah, blah, blah. So all the standard stuff is right. But the best advice I think I would give, because I presume this is your first tank, get stuck in. Don't be too afraid, because we overthink things far too much in this hobby.
Yeah.
And we obsess about the minutiae. You're going to make mistakes. That's okay. All right. It just, and if that means a coral dies or a fish dies, I'm sorry, that is the reality of the hobby sometimes. As long as you're not trying to do that and you're trying your hardest, that's cool. So get stuck in. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's okay. Nothing is going to be perfect. We don't live in a perfect world where nothing dies and things don't look healthy all the time.
I look back at myself from when I first started, and I remember I went, I'm never ever. This will make you laugh. I said, I will never have corals ever. I don't want corals. Exactly. They're too much hassle. I can't keep them alive. I've now got more corals than everyone.
But that's what I mean. And because when I got my first tank, I was Googling what is the hardiest coral. I want the most bomb-proof coral, full stop. I don't care what it looks like. I just want it to be bomb-proof. I made a video. One of the early videos I made that's done really well was top 7 corals, beginner corals that aren't boring.
Yeah.
Because there are loads of corals that are actually a tiny bit more challenging, but they're still relatively forgiving. And they're not a brown lump. So personally, I think we're saying the same thing, basically. Just get stuck in, enjoy it.
I think the only reason I actually got corals, because the owner of the fish shop, he just went, look, here is a piece of green star polyps, or it was actually I now know it was a pink gorgonian, like a short polyp one. And I put it in, and I was like, it's not dead. we assume at first that our tanks are basically the most hostile environments.
Yeah. But so 1 second. I've just realised my jellyfish tank wasn't So one other thing, one of the things I did early on, that I had a neighbour who gave me a Monty, a plating Monty.
Yeah.
And I'd had my tank, I don't know, 6 months. And he said, oh, you can have a piece if you want. I was like, oh, what is it? He was like, it's a plate coral. He described it as a plate coral. And I was like, oh, I don't. So I went and Googled it, searched plate coral. It came up with 1 million different corals.
Yeah.
And I couldn't identify it. So the day after I got it, I took it out. I was like, it's going to kill all my corals. It's going to wipe out my tank. I don't know what it is. It's a danger. It'll have pests on it. I don't want this. I took it out and I threw it away. And it's like, and then 6 months later, I was like, oh, it's a Monty.
You have a neighbour that has corals?
This was years ago.
Oh, why did you move?
I know, yeah, right. I had 2 neighbours.
You should have stayed there.
But yeah. So it's like we stress too much about the thing. We put the hobby on a pedestal. We think it's just this impossible thing, and the reality is, most of it isn't that hard.
That's because we tell each other it's really hard.
That's because some people say it's really hard.
I
And because
know.
we love to say how clever we are.
That's
I'm such a
exactly.
genius because I can keep corals. It's so difficult. And it's like that you get jokes in the freshwater side about how smug saltwater aquarists are, because a lot of them are.
Yes, yeah. It's it's not unusual for people to, when they come collect corals from the farm, I go and they go, oh, I can never keep your SPS. I go, there you go, there's a piece. Go give it a go. They come back 3 weeks later. They go, it's still alive. I'm like, yeah, I told you it would be.
There's a caveat with that though, is that don't get too carried away, because SPS, for example, I don't care what anyone tells you, they're difficult to keep. And I know what you're saying, because
I go for a digi, so I go for it easier than average.
Nonetheless, if you started buying SPS corals straight away, you're gonna get feel down about things because it's going to go wrong. So it's not to be taken lightly, but there are levels to it, and you shouldn't worry about most things in the hobby, is my opinion. So Reefer 250, I think that if that's your first tank, it might not be, I think that is the perfect size first tank. 3 foot, good enough size to have some cool fish like wrasses, a tang. Don't tell anyone, don't tell the tang police, but you can get tang in there. You can get loads of corals, loads of space. It's not too big that it's unmanageable. If you need to do a 50% water change, it's a bit of a faff, but it's not like it's a 6 foot tank. So I think that's a good size. Nice water stability.
Never stop learning. Never think that you know enough, because you don't. I can guarantee you don't. You won't know enough in a year. You'll know enough to keep some corals, but you won't know. There are pests and things like that. I see now, and I'll go, I've never seen that before.
Completely.
So, or a crab will come in. I'm like, is this a good crab or a bad crab? So you're learning all the time. Even other people, look, they've just found those snails that eat vermitids. We didn't know that until recently. So you will never assume, because as soon as you assume you're good enough, that's when you'll get caught out.
Completely. And whilst you shouldn't be scared of the hobby, do your research. And always be, like you say, be aware that you don't know squat, because I feel like that a lot of the time. And like, you'd look at my tank and you'd think, well, obviously he's mastered it. Well, maybe I'm not being arrogant, but some people would think that. But the reality is, I don't know half of what you need to know.
Our tanks are often built on the skeletons of what went wrong.
Yeah.
You don't see all those skeletons because there's corals growing on them.
Exactly. Yeah. So just get stuck in. It's a wicked hobby.
Yeah.
And it's a never-ending learning curve. There's a question about setting up a phytoculture. I've never done that. Have you done that?
No, never done it.
No, sorry, Reefkeepers Archive, can't answer it. Steve Webb, is it wrong to get a very small gold rush tank to eat algae in a 90 litre knowing I'll have to rehome it? No, it is not. Absolutely not. Crack on. Just don't tell anyone I said it was okay.
Yeah.
No
one's listening.
I know. I've got one in the display tank is probably around 100 litres. The total system volume is about 150 litres, but I've got one in there. He's absolutely fine. 2 foot by 2 foot by 16 inches tall. He's fine. I will have to remove him at some point, maybe in a year, maybe 2, but that's fine. I'll do that when he gets too big. I'll move him on.
It's the people that don't move them on when it becomes a problem.
So there are times. So for example, I was in Reefkeeper Moss End yesterday, and I saw there was a powder blue tang in with a firefish.
Yeah.
And the powder blue tang was battering this poor little firefish. The firefish couldn't swim away. It looked like it was just accepted it was going to die.
Yeah.
So I went and tapped someone on the shoulder and one of the staff and said, "Can you move?" I just said, "Look, this is happening," and they went and moved it straight away.
Yeah.
So if you've got that situation and you don't do anything about it, shame on you, basically.
Yeah.
But if you know that you might have a tang that will get too big and you can grow it and move it on in 2 years' time, fine. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
So job done. Do it, but don't do it with caution, of course.
do it with caution.
But no, as in, be careful and like keep an eye on it. Make sure it keep watching. Don't just assume day one it's fine. Therefore, it'll be fine.
Yeah, look, it's exactly the same as I don't know about you, but it's exactly the same as me. Those angels will get massive. I got 4 of them, 5 of them, and they'll get a foot long each. So, and those probably will be less easy to rehome. Although they're kind of you, Jamie, if you're listening. Jamie with your full reef tank. But the reason they're small at the moment, and there will always be someone who wants one. If you give something away for free, someone will take it. You might lose a bit of money.
That's a good point.
But you might lose a bit of money. But if they go, look, this is my tank. I know someone who's got a 12-foot tank who could definitely take some of these fish. So if I go, do you want this fish for free? They'll take it.
Exactly.
It's as simple as that.
I've got a one spot fox face in my 2 foot by 2 foot tank as well.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. That's going to get too big. It might even not be a one spot. I can't remember now thinking about it. But that'll get 10 inches long. That'll get huge. Yeah. But I'll move it on when it does. That's fine.
Well, don't bring it to me because I hate fox faces.
I know, but you can either sell it if you really want to. But more to the point, to your point, you've got to be prepared. Like, so worst case scenario, if that gets too big, if it started eating corals, I would catch it and take it to my local fish shop, and I'd say, if you want to give me store credit, that's great. To a third of the value of what you would sell it, that's cool. But if not, you can keep it because you're doing me a favor. So you need to be prepared to make the sacrifice, as in the sacrifice is losing money.
The coral farm is full of fish which people didn't want anymore. There was one fish that someone's got, because he was a fisherman. He went, I'm going to kill this fish. Do you want it? And I'm like, don't kill it. I'll take it.
I spoke to someone who had a 6-line wrasse that went nasty, and he flushed it down the toilet. And I was like, mate, that's so. He was 5 miles from his local fish shop. It's like, just catch it and take it back. That's so awful.
No,
because that's your fault. That's not the fish's fault.
But do you know what's interesting? That fish that was so aggressive that he was going to kill, in my system, it's been as good as gold. Never ever not touched a single fish. It's all about the hierarchy. It was the top of the hierarchy in that tank. In my tank, it's the bottom.
It's the A one.
Yeah, so it's now as good as gold. Yeah,
so that is not acceptable. But buying a fish that you know will get too big is acceptable as long as you're responsible with it.
Yeah,
is my
so as I said, the guy was a fisherman, so it's like people have different.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
if you're a fisherman and you're catching fish and killing fish, it becomes it's normal. It's the same as these fish in a tropical island somewhere. They'd eat them. So they're going, why are you keeping my dinner in a glass box?
I don't. It's different though, isn't it? But I get the perspective, but it's I don't accept it.
No, there you
I don't accept the argument. I understand it, but I don't accept it. But Nick's Reef 213 says he's going away for 4 days next week. I'm very tempted to set up my auto feeder, or not to set up my auto feeder, i.e., not to feed for 4 days. I would be on board with that, unless you've got anything really finicky. I'm nervous about not feeding my copper band for 4 days.
I would be very nervous about not,
because I wonder if when I start to feed him again, he's like, no.
I don't know what this is.
But exactly. What food? I don't know. Give me food. But 4 days, personally, I would be okay with. It would depend on what fish you've got. But if you do set up the auto feeder, make it feed once every other day. So it's twice in the 4 days you're away. So then there's something.
The best thing to do, get a plate, put the auto feeder on a plate, test it to see how much is coming out. Because trust me, there's a lot more food comes out of those than people realize at first.
Do you know what? So this is I got given a Reef Factory smart feeder recently. I used to have an auto feeder. I used to have an Eheim one. An Eheim one, closing the gate so you could get a small amount of food is so difficult. It's either nothing or half a ton of food.
You can stick like tape over half of it so less comes out.
What I ended up doing, but it's so clunky. The Reef Factory one is split in two, so it turns out so much less. And it's not just the Reef Factory one; you get others that do that. But anyway, I would rather feed nothing for 4 days than feed far too much for 4 days, depending on what fish you have. If it's just like clownfish or whatever, they'll be cool.
When fish get shipped over from Indonesia or Australia, they are often starved for a few days because they don't. If a fish is full of waste and they put that in the bag, it will kill the fish. So they don't feed the fish for it can be like 2 or 3 days before they ship them, so that they're empty, so they're not going to pollute the bag.
Yeah. If you're doing that every week, that's a problem.
You're a bad person.
you're a bad person. But if it's a one-off or once every 6 months or whatever, I wouldn't sweat it at all, personally.
As I prefer the idea of the auto feeder every 2 days rather than completely not feeding them. But that's fish need to eat less than we think as well.
Yeah, this is very true. And the last question I'm going to post is from Prestige Reef Aquarium. What would be a good tabling coral for a nano reef, not too fast growing, but does table? It's a tricky one, that is.
When you say tabling, do you mean like plating or like a tabling? The only tabling corals are described as acropora, really, aren't they?
I'm interpreting that as plating. So really, for a nano reef, it's difficult because Montes tabling acros, but you don't want that in a nano reef because they'll mess up your water chemistry and it'll be too difficult to balance it.
Yeah.
Unless you're quite experienced. I think something like a chalice is probably your best bet because they don't grow too fast. They got sweeper tentacles. They're relatively hardy, although some of them can be a bit of a pain. But
if you want something that looks plating, and it is a chalice, a Hollywood Stunner chalice. It's thin. It's not particularly like, I know you don't like them. I don't particularly like them either. But I'm just answering the question.
it's all right.
Oh,
I'm
thanks.
fussy.
Thanks. It's all right. No, I actually don't like that. If you said to me what is my least favorite coral in the coral farm, it is the Hollywood Stunner chalice.
Oh, really?
Because when you frag them, most corals you can just put glue on them and stick them to a frag plug, and that's it. You do that to those, the next day they've all come off. And I'm like, what was even the point?
Yeah, all chalices slime like crazy. I find
they are the worst. I frag lots of chalices, and they're not a problem. But those, and what happens is the patch where the coral is, where you put the glue, is dead the next day underneath. So you can then re-glue them. They stick on fine. You just have to do the job twice.
Yeah, what a pain. But there you go. So I think probably a chalice is maybe the best bet, because that's not going to drain your alg too much.
Yeah,
but they're a bit more forgiving. I find chalices, the skin, the flesh on chalices is super thin.
Yeah.
So I fragged my Raja Rampage recently, and I've let it settle for weeks, because if I sold it straight away, it's like it peels off. It's so thin, so it needs to have time. So they can be a bit finicky, but I think they're all right. John says, where do we get questions and answers? So I've ended the thing, but there's a little thing you need to click on when I start the Q&A. But you can post a question now. We're friends. Post it. We'll answer it. Because normally this is really busy. There's probably 100 more people watching, and we don't get through all the questions. But today it's been a bit better.
But don't ask if Matthew's out there. Matthew's just booked a consultation with me. Don't answer his questions.
I'm getting Matthew. Post it now. We'll extend it. We'll go for an hour, and I'll answer everything you need to know. Right, we're going to move on because we need to wrap it up, because we've been yammering on as usual.
True.
Now, so next to it, we're going to do fish of the week, coral of the week, product of the week, and tank of the week.
Yeah.
But I'm going to change this because I want it to be a bit slicker, a bit more like go bang.
Yeah.
So instead of me and you going one fish each, one product each, one coral
we
each,
do one of it. Yeah.
You are going to do fish and coral because you're the fish and coral guy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do product and tanks because I'm the product guy. So
okay.
Ryan,
deal.
Fish of the week.
I actually put some thought into these, and I thought, what can I do? And I picked a Starkey damselfish. Now you might
zoom into the picture 1 second.
You might think, why have I picked a damselfish? Now, not everyone, lots of people have seen this fish in my tank and gone, oh, what is that fish? It looks amazing, thinking it's an angelfish, only to then realize it's a damselfish. Now, these are not the average damselfish. They are one of the most peaceful damselfish. You only usually keep them by themselves. And they look like a resplendent angelfish, which is... So you see how they're very similar.
Is that a resplendent angelfish?
I'm pretty sure it's a resplendent, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like a Japanese, a fire angel or whatever they're called.
No,
anyway, whatever.
No, fireball.
Fireball.
No,
whatever.
yeah. No, that's a...
So for clarity, and obviously if you're listening, sorry, but on the screen, the one over my mouse over is the angelfish now.
Yeah.
With the writing archive in the corner, and the other one is the Starkey damsel.
It's so it's I have no interest in any other damselfish, but I love that fish for some reason. So
he is quite cool, to be fair. And he's not uber aggressive, is he?
No, and you saw it, didn't you?
Yeah,
I think because it was here when you came to the house, and I just think the only problem with them, damselfish, people are expecting them to be like £5 or now like £10. These are like 70 to 90 pounds. I would love to know why. I'm not sure why this specific damselfish is so expensive compared to the rest of them. So if anyone knows, I'm interested. And usually when I ask these questions, someone comes back to me and says
it's normally something like harder to catch or rarer, or or deeper water or something. Or
the colors of them is like they're when you see them, they're very strikingly colored fish. And what I've realized is different. Although fish can be the same color, but they can be very different colors of that color,
more vivid or brighter.
So a yellow tang is far more vivid than the goldflake. The goldflake's a nice fish, but when you see the yellow tang next to it, you're like, whoa, there's not even a comparison between the two of them.
I've got an answer as to why they're so expensive. It's because they've got cool yellow goggly eyes.
There you go. There you go.
Thanks, Higgity. But there you go. So that's your fish of the week. And we're going to move on straight away because this is a slick bang, go. This is
the other one. Oh, am I doing the coral now?
Coral of the week.
I'm going for fungi ears. I love fungi ears. I had like a fungi ear, like fetish or addiction at one point where I just wanted every single color of them. Most of them you see are green, but I've had
That
them.
one's not green.
No, I've had them in red. That was one that I actually had at the coral farm. That was a half red, half green, and half orange one. They come in orange, all green. Some of them are white with a pink edge. That's like a rainbow one.
Queen City corals.
They are an easy coral to look after. You put them on the sand, which means they're not take up your real estate, because usually sand is where you fill your rock work first usually, and then you put stuff on the sand when you've run out of space. Yeah. And when you feed them, you can put the food on them, and then you can watch it slowly be drawn into their mouth at the top. They open their mouth, and then they close it around it. They're really interesting. They're like one of those interactive corals. And they're pretty hardy. They're not like scollies, which just usually, die. That you can feed them if you want. You don't have to.
Have you got any for sale at the moment?
I have 2 fungias at the farm. Neither of them are on the website. Why do you want one?
So I want a nice one.
I've got a bright orange one, which is available. I don't know if I sent you a picture of an orange one. Yeah, I've got a bright orange one. So also, you're gonna need some Bernardapora here soon.
Yeah, sounds like it. But there we go. So I do like them, because at the moment I'm looking for corals for my sand bed, i.e. my bare bottom. In my LPS tank.
You want a Trachophilia, and a Fungia.
There you go. So that is fish of the week and coral of the week. And fungi is cool. You can get commensal shrimp or symbiotic shrimp. I can't remember what they're called, but they go with the longer tentacled ones.
Am I always going to be the person who does I'm happy to do this. Always fish, always corals. Good.
I think so.
Because I tried that. The reason I picked those fish, those corals, was to show different coloured fungias that people might not have seen. And I picked a Starkey damsel rather than a flame angel, because it's something that people haven't seen.
But this is the thing. So when you and I talk about this sort of thing, your eyes light up and you're like, I love to show people stuff they haven't seen.
Yeah, I do.
So I think so. That's why I thought this would be good for you to do those two.
I was going to do a Bellina angelfish, which is the one I posted a picture at the other day.
We'll do that next week.
That's all. Well,
sounds cool.
Yeah.
There you go. You don't need to watch next week now. You could just So.
Yeah.
Now, product of the week and tank of the week. Then, so product of the week. I got married, as you know, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So my marriage is important to me, mainly because if I got divorced, it'd be expensive and I'd lose the tank.
True.
So I need the marriage saver. This is a water leak alarm. So I am absolutely terrible at flooding my RO system. I do it all. I've had an RO filter for 8 years, and I still not regularly, but more often than I should, once or twice a year at least.
Yeah.
I forget to turn it off, and it floods my bloody floor, and it drives me crazy. I still do it, and I found you can use a shut off. I was
going to say, why don't you use a shut off?
But that involves you have to put the shut off in the container, because I don't have a container that can have one in it all the time. So there'll be time. I've got a little sensor with a shut off.
Yeah.
But sometimes I forget to put it in, or I think, do you know what? I'll just go and grab a cup of tea and then I'll come back and put it in. Yeah. And then I forget, and I'm like, I'm going to go and make a video. An hour later, Alex. So and this thing then. So this does this. You can just put this. It's a water leak alarm. Basically, it's got these 2 little sensors at the top there, metals, and when they sense water, it screams like a smoke alarm. Yeah, it's a horrible sound. But have this by your RO top off dispenser. This is made by Honeywell. You can get it from off eBay or Amazon for 20 quid. Man, they just it doesn't stop it overflowing, but it tells you straight away when it has overflowed, so you don't come down to 30 liters of water.
Yeah. We've all done it. Oh
man, it's so frustrating. So it's just they're just wicked, and it's not really a reefing piece of equipment, but they're brilliant. I also have one of these in my sump underneath the because the pipes in my tank go across the dry cabinet. So I have one there in case it ever drips, which is not likely to, but if it does, I want to know about it because it'll drip on my plugs. So that is product of the week. And then, of course, that's non-sponsored. Honeywell aren't sponsoring me. Tank of the week. Oh, and this is a point. So tank of the week. I have now started doing. I set up a Facebook page called the Prestige Reef Dork Show. So if you're not on it already, go and click on the Prestige Reef Dork Show and join the page. I had to change it so you need to be approved to join, because I started getting spam within about 4 days of it going
Really?
up. Someone selling t-shirts or whatever. I was like, oh mate. But anyway, but click on it. I'll accept you straight away.
Yeah.
So there is a page there, and what I'm going to do every week is I'm going to post up saying post your tank, and if it's great, I'll show it as tank of the week. So go and do that. I posted this week, and it's a small group. There's only about 70 or 80 people so far, and there were some really nice tanks, but a lot of them were quite junior and sort of early stages. So there wasn't anything that I think is that caught my eye, and I thought, that's awesome. I want to share it with people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with a tank instead that I had lined up from the last couple of weeks ago, which was from a guy called Unorthodox Reef on Instagram. You've heard of him?
I recognize the name. That is a nice tank.
It's probably 6 feet long.
Yeah.
Unorthodox_reef. It's massive. Maybe it's more bigger than 6 feet long. Big. A few things I like about this. For a start, he's got a load of fish. Like he's got 1, 2, 3. He's got 5 yellow tangs in shot.
Can you open it up bigger so that you can see it?
No, I can't.
Oh, you can't.
I tried to zoom in, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's all it does.
Yeah.
But he's got a load of yellow tangs. He's got a load of fish in there. A ton of fish. He's got a kingy angel actually. Can you see the kingy in the center?
I can't.
Ooh, sorry, Fred. He's got a regal angel. He's got some really cool fish. A little checkerboard wrasse there. Some cool fish and some big aquapora colonies, which I really like.
I'm just
You're Googling.
I'm finding it so I can see the video.
Yeah,
because that looks like a really nice tank.
It's a cool tank. It's a really cool tank. It's a little bit of a mixed reef because there's a few LPS knocking around as well, and I think maybe is that a Gorgonian? No, maybe not.
If I can make the angelfish tank even like 50% that, it would be bloody amazing.
Exactly. That's a really cool tank. How many followers has this guy got actually? He's probably
not enough.
20,000, so not bad. But you could he's just got some the photography isn't like pro level, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And he's got some awesome. He's got 2 angelfish in shot there.
Yeah. He's got something similar to me where he's got three sections for coral. Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah, how everyone hated my 3 sections.
Yeah, I know, 3 islands.
Yeah.
But it's just a really cool tank. So I would recommend you check it. Oh, he's got a long nose hawkfish as well.
That is one of the nicest tanks I've ever seen, and I really hope that I can do something similar to that.
It's cool. I love how grown out it is as well. Like my tank's all higgledy-piggledy because I've removed massive scapes of the chunks of the aquascape.
Yeah.
So I've got some corals that are like 5 years old and others that are 6 months old. I love that that's a bit more even. So
I just like anyone doing something which is, as I said, you can see he's got a few angels in there. He's got 2 of the angels which are reef safe mostly. So I might have a bit more trouble with the blueface, which is even eating Millipora, but I'll try my best.
Fair enough. Well, there you go. So, and that is my tank of the week. And I want to do tank of the week from the Prestige Reef Dork Facebook page. So make sure you go on there and set, if you've got an awesome tank, post it and it'll be selected.
It doesn't have to be the most amazing tank like that. If it's something weird or interesting, or like, it was nice if it's an established tank.
Yeah,
that's good. But I don't want people to go, oh no, I can't post my tank because it's not good enough. If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
If you've got like a reef vase, that's interesting.
Or a nano tank that's really grown out. It doesn't have to be like I like SPS. Everybody knows that, but it doesn't have to be SPS tanks at all.
Yeah,
it just has to be a cool tank. I saw a tank with a mantis shrimp this weekend.
Oh yeah,
load of corals and a mantis shrimp. So if you got one like that, something different, post it.
The thing that stood out to me for that video mostly was the fish. I couldn't even see the corals, but I knew just based on the fish, that's a cool tank.
Yeah. It's loads of bright fish. Yeah, loads of fish as well. Big fish. It was cool. Oh, he has a YouTube channel as well, says Chris Allen. Interesting. But there you go. So that is my tank of the week. And one last question I'm going to answer, or that you're going to answer. What are the requirements for fungia corals?
They're pretty much the same as like as long as you can keep other corals happy. I wouldn't say there's any specific requirements. They are generally kept in lower light because obviously they're on the sand.
Yeah.
You don't have to feed them. The only reason I think I've ever lost one was low, like extremely low nutrients. Like LPS do not like extremely low nutrients, and what happens is part of them will die off, and then eventually it will go all the way around, and the whole thing dies off.
So put it in your tank. Don't have zero nutrients.
Yeah, it's if you can keep a torch coral, I wouldn't say it's any more difficult than a torch coral or a frog spawn or a torch corals are a pain in the ass.
But yeah, I take the point. All right, well, so I'm going to wrap it up at that point because we've got to almost 2 hours, and I feel like we're getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah, actually, I think it was interesting because as soon as we started talking about something that we were passionate about, which was the scuba diving and the snorkeling, it's like we light up. You see a difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's cool. But there we go. So thanks everybody as always for joining. Ryan, thank you for coming along, and it's a pleasure to be in the presence of someone from the UK's #1 coral selling website. That's great. And we will be back same time next week. Next Reef Dork video on a Friday will be 2 weeks from today. By the way, 2 weeks from 2 weeks time on Friday. And see you all later. Bye guys. Cheers. Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.